guys! I haven't done a monthly wrap-up video for a while, and I felt like January was a good month to do one, so here we are. The first book that I read in January was over 800 pages long, and that's Voyager, the third book in the Outlander series. And it was a really interesting experience because the last book that I finished in 2015 was also over 800 pages, and was one that I had originally started in July. And it was one that I really had to push myself to get through, even though I was enjoying it. But with Voyager, I started it on a Saturday, and I finished it a week later on Sunday. All I wanted to do with my free time was read it, and even though it was equally as long as the other book, I got through it way faster. So you can probably imagine that I really liked the book, and I did. It was just such an adventure, and you never know what's going to happen next. If you think you do, you're wrong, and there's just a lot of twisting plot lines, and it's just so exciting to see what happens. And even if you don't know what's going to happen, you know that it's going to be exciting and that you're going to see characters you've met before but in new intriguing ways. And I just really loved the book. I ended up giving it 5 stars because I enjoyed it so much, and because I will definitely continue on with this series. I think the only problem I kind of had with the book was that it had a pretty stereotypical portrayal of a Chinese guy. I don't know how accurate it would have been for his character to have existed at that time, but overall I did find it really interesting, and the character himself was complex towards the end. Definitely just an interesting character, and I'm sure I will probably get to learn more about him in the future books. So that was Voyager by Diana Gabaldon. The next book that I read was Interstellar Cinderella. This is a children's picture book that I read at a friend's house who has a daughter, and she basically handed me the book and said, "You should read this, it's really cool." And so I did. And it's basically a space-aged Cinderella tale, and it's just really awesome and feminist, and it has a really cool ending, so you should check it out. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The next 2 books that I read in January were both physical books off of my shelves, and both books that I really wanted to read. I chose to read these 2 books in January because they both start in January. The first one is A Very Long Engagement by Sebastian Japrousseau, and this opens with a scene in January with 5 soldiers marching to the front lines of the war. The 5 soldiers have all shot themselves in the hand or the foot to get out of the war, and one of the soldiers has a fiance who is the main narrator of the book, and it basically just follows her trying to figure out information about what happened to her fiance. So that's where the title comes from, A Very Long Engagement. I didn't like this book as much as I had hoped. The writing is very reliant on kind of soliloquies or letters. There's not a lot of action or dialogue, so it makes the book go a little bit slower. And since I was often reading this right before going to bed, I found myself falling asleep a lot, even though I was enjoying the book. So I am not counting this as a new favorite, but I did give it 4 stars. And I would definitely like to re-watch the movie because that's how I found out about the book, and I really loved the movie. So now that I've read it, I'm really interested to see how I will feel about the movie. The next book is Like Water for Chocolate by Laura Esquivel, a novel in monthly installments with recipes, romances, and home remedies. So there are basically 12 chapters in this book, 1 per each month of the year. I don't think the plot follows those months, but it was released in monthly installments, so the first one is January and is more of a winter-themed recipe. If you haven't heard of this book or seen the movie, it's basically about a girl who has the power to infuse her emotions into the food that she makes, and then the people who eat those foods have those emotions or have really strange reactions. It's a really charming novel, and though things don't go very smoothly, it's just a really good, heartwarming book to read. And The ending surprisingly made me cry a little bit. I'm pretty sure I added this to my favorites shelf on Goodreads, and of course I rated it 5 stars. I have seen the movie already, but I am definitely looking forward to seeing it again since I haven't watched it for a few years. Those are all the books that I finished in January. There is one more book that I read the majority of in January, and that's Legend by Marie Lu. I finished it just a couple days into February, and it's the first more diverse ebook that I read in an attempt to balance reading just the books on my physical shelves this year. I had the ebook for a while. I'm sure I bought it when it was a couple of dollars on Amazon, and because I had heard so many people talking about it. And I didn't really end up loving it. I rated it 3 stars. I enjoyed my experience with it and got through it pretty easily. It just wasn't really a book that I would fall in love with. It just kind of felt like another dystopia where there's a government in power and it's corrupt, and there is a protagonist who is destined to fix it all. And in this case, there are 2 protagonists who work together, and it's a really interesting relationship between the 2 of them. And I did really appreciate that there are a lot of strong female characters in the book. One of the main characters is female, and her corrupt government leader is also female, and there are a couple of other important females that play a role in the book. And then the main male character is Asian, and the author is Asian herself. So it was definitely an interesting, unique reading experience, and I'm glad to have read it, but I don't plan on reading the other books in the series. I just don't really feel the need to. So that's how my reading year has gone so far. I think it's pretty successful, and I think I'm just going to continue on the same path of reading physical books that I have and more diverse ebooks. So if you read any of these books, let me know what you thought, or if you have any recommendations, I'm always open to that. And let me know how your reading year has gone so far. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.